This is the most expensive knife I have ever purchased. Scratch that. This is the most expensive thing that I have ever purchased, outside of like a car or a home or something like that. And in fact, now that I think about it, this is the most expensive thing I've ever held in my hands. I've never held a watch, a piece of jewelry, or anything that amounts to the value of this particular knife. And I find that interesting, right? That's a much broader topic of why would somebody spend that kind of money on a knife like this? Why is a knife like this worth that amount of money? That kind of a thing, but that's not the point of this video. I really just wanted to grab your attention. The point of this video is to show this knife off. Because, spoiler alert, I may have been able to purchase this knife, but I can't afford to own this knife. That is a very important distinction, and that is something that's followed me through my whole knife collecting journey, right? I have purchased a lot of very expensive knives, but I still can't afford to own them. So, this is probably going to be leaving my hands relatively soon, but it has been fun having this knife, checking it out, enjoying it, and sharing it with you guys. So, what is this? If you can't tell, this is a Mick Strider custom knife, but this is a little bit extra on multiple fronts. So this is what they call an XL. So it is the largest folding knife that Strider makes. So it goes PT, JVA, SNG, SMF, and then the XL. Now, back in the day, it was even more confusing because the original name for this was SNG XL. So it got really confusing because it was called an SNG XL, but it was larger than an SMF. They've since scratched that. Now this is just the XL. This is also what they call a Yeti, which gets very confusing, but it seems to follow this particular blade grind. This tanto blade with the recurve on this section right here, Nightmare Ground. Now the original Yetis appeared on this style handle with the deep milling that goes all the way around, this kind of blocky new style of handle that they did a number of years ago. But since then, this particular blade grind has been featured on double gunner grips and other knives, and it's still called a Yeti by most people. This is also very unique because it has a Hamon, so it's differentially heat treated. Mick used a high carbon tool steel for this, so because of that, it's able to take on a patina, or in this case, kind of a manual darkening right there. And you can see how the different heat treatments bring out different tones. So you can see this Hamon line going all the way around on both sides. That's because this goes all the way through the steel. Now the etching and the darkening is what kind of brings it out, but the actual differentiated heat treatment goes all the way through the blade. This was popularized or invented by ancient bladesmiths from Japan, right? The katana is one that features Hamon lines. Since then, Hamons have appeared on fixed blades, folders, usually higher end stuff, and now on Mick Strider Customs. This was very cool because this was a limited thing he did for maybe a year. He did a handful of these. Maybe a handful is not accurate, but he did this style Hamons for about a year, and then he hasn't done it since, and he didn't do it before. And it's a little bit uncharacteristic of Striders and Mick Strider and how they kind of approach knives. So it's very unique and very, very cool. This also has his Magma finish on the flats there, which is basically taking bronze or copper slag, putting it onto the blade to create this kind of texture. And then you get some golds popping through on the copper. And then it will also patina, as you can see how it's darkening in sections, just like copper does. So very cool treatment there. On the handle, it is hot hammered. So he has hand hammered a texture into the scales here, as well as putting the same Magma slag on top. You can see the golds coming through. And then it is also anodized blue, gold, purple. You can especially see on the smooth parts right there. So it creates, let's see how close we can get. So he creates a very cool texture on this thing. That is just nothing you're going to see on any other Strider knives. The other unique feature on this knife is that it has a 3D, not a 3D, well, yeah, 3D milled clip, you can see right here, which is very uncharacteristic of Strider knives. Strider religiously uses their bent titanium pocket clip, even on the customs. Now, it may have an orange peel finish or a different color, anodization, something like that, but 9.99 times out of 10, you're going to get a bent steel traditional pocket clip that's the exact same dimensions and make as their production knives. But on this one, which is very, very rare, it's an actual milled titanium pocket clip on here that has the same hot hammered finish, anodizing, and everything else involved. And the other cool thing is, despite this having this unique milled pocket clip, it's actually fully reversible, just like most of his knives. You can swap it out and make this left-hand carried. Now, the action on this thing is the smoothest of any Strider I've ever felt. There's zero blade play. It is super butter smooth, especially running on just phosphor bronze washers. So nothing special in terms of bearings or anything. You can see his signature right there. Very cool piece. And like I said, there's obviously a lot of handwork in here. There's a lot going on, a lot of finishes, a lot of process, right? A lot of things could go wrong on this knife that would mean a scrapped blade, scrapped handle, things like that. So that all adds to the cost of a knife. And the fact that it's all hand done. Strider, Mick has touched all of this knife. He did work on all of this knife, hours and hours of work on all of this. Most of his knives, the bulk of the work is in the grind on the blade. You know, the handles might have some laser engraving or orange peel finish or some special anodizing. But for the most part, the majority of the work is on the blade and the grind. Whereas this, there is a lot of work on these handles here, all done by hand. Very, very cool. So this encompasses like a lot of different features on a knife. It's kind of like a all-in-one, every finish Mick has done. Of course, that's not completely true. It's not every finish, but it has a lot going on this knife. And I know some of you are going to say it has too much going on. And I get that. You know, I totally understand why that might be an opinion that you have, because this kind of has everything in the kitchen sink going on. I could maybe make some arguments to say I would have preferred to not have the Magma on the blade and just have this be a Hamon blade. But, you know, it is what it is. And he kind of threw everything at this knife and did all the finishes on this knife. You can see the size difference in case you were wondering on a regular SMF. This is actually a CC SMF, and then the XL there. Now, the XL is available in a lot of different finishes. Or, I mean, a lot of different styles of blades. You can get an XL in a double gunner grip. You can get an XL kind of in a less intense version of this. Let's do a weight comparison. 6.1 on the SMF CC, and this XL here, 9.8 ounces. So very, very, very big knife. So yeah, like I said, these were done a few years ago. He did a bunch of Hamon runs. He did some double gunner grips, different blade styles, and hasn't happened since. So that's kind of how Mick tends to do his customs. He usually focuses on a particular style of custom for about a year, year and a half or so, and then he moves on to a different one. So he'll produce certain ones for a length of time, and then he kind of moves on to something else. So for example, a couple years ago, it was all about the full tie double gunner grips. You saw those popping up, different blade finishes. He did a lot of retro finishes on those blades, the grid pattern. He did kind of the older pattern of the tiger striping with the blasting, as well as more traditional satin finishes. He did XLs, he did SMFs. I don't know if he did any S&Gs. Then after that, he moved on to the batwing style. And once again, he did batwing XLs, he did batwings with blades with different finishes. That's kind of where the Magma finish popped up really strong in the darker variety and not the gold variety like this. So he did a bunch of those. And now I believe he's moved on to CC customs. Full titanium, contoured scales is what he seems to be doing right now. I don't think it's anything super official, but it does seem like he kind of follows that pattern. So he did this a number of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. He was doing stuff like this and hasn't done it since. Not sure if it'll ever kind of pop up again, if he'll ever do Hamons again, or if it was kind of a one-time thing. But definitely a cool monster piece and an awesome slice of Strider history. Mick Strider custom history, to be exact. Let me know down below, what do you think of this knife? Do you think it's cool? Let me know.